Welcome in to the Rotowire Fantasy Football Podcast, the Week 14 preview edition. Of course, as always, brought to you by our friends over at WinBet. I'm your host, John McKechnie, joined as always by Mario. And if you're joining us on the stream, you may be noticing a different background for yours truly. I am actually in the office, and guess what? So is Mario. We are in different rooms, but we're streaming from the same office space. So I thought this is very similar to the film Best in Show, where the couple's talking about how they met. It's like, we met at Starbucks. Not the same Starbucks, a different Starbucks. The Starbucks from across the street. You, in this case, of course, reading the J. Crew catalog, myself reading the LL Bean catalog.
I haven't seen that. I'm sorry. I don't know the reference. What I was gonna say is it's like that commercial from the late '90s or early 2000s or whatever, where they're like, "Is your child fat?" And it's a public service commercial. Like, your fat kid is gaming all day, and then they show like this one terrible fat kid who's like calls his grandma from upstairs and like, "Grandma, bring me."
Oh yeah, he had to have his
I
grape
don't know.
soda bottle.
I guess that's Cartman. He was telling him to bring him soda or something.
That's right.
That's what it's also like.
He had like a dialing wand, like obese Homer almost, but he was a real life kid in a PSA commercial, I guess.
Yeah, they're still using it today, and he's probably like older than us.
Yeah, no feet on the guy
Getting
anymore.
owned your whole life for being that terrible child.
Good stuff. Okay, all right. Let's dive in. As always, we get into every single game on the slate. This is our last week with bye week, so a lot of leagues with the expanded season are using this as the last week of the regular season, and then we'll kick things off for fantasy playoffs in week 15 when the playing field's a little more level and there are no bye weeks to be concerned about. But we'll start things off as we always do with the Thursday game. We got kind of a funky one. We got a interconference matchup. We got the Steelers traveling to Minnesota to face the Vikings. Steelers coming off of a home victory over the Ravens last week. Happens on the last play of the game, essentially, for them to cinch that one. And the Vikings continue to be their mercurial selves. I guess the big fantasy storyline for this one, though, Mario, is Dalvin Cook were 11 days removed from his injury against the 49ers, in which he suffered that dislocated left shoulder. He's questionable, and it seems like he's actually trending towards playing. He's viewed as a game-time call, is the latest, according to Josina Anderson of USA Today, and everything points to him at least giving it a shot here. So if you do have Dalvin Cook and he's active, what do you do?
I don't know, John. I guess you hope you have Madison instead, and if you do, or if you have Madison also, and if you do, I guess I would just play Madison, just because I feel like at most, even if Cook plays, the most he could probably do is, I don't know, 20, maybe 30 snaps, and not that that's a guarantee. I guess he could do more than that too, but this quick of a turnaround from a dislocated shoulder, and I don't know if this is the same shoulder that he had the previous dislocation issues with, but best case scenario, he has like, or I don't even know what's better. He either has two equally destroyed shoulders. Like, once you dislocate those things, they're never the same, and he's always going to be at risk for re-injury each time more than the previous time because of this injury. So it's either both of them are busted, or he has just the most destroyed single shoulder of all time, and it's not diluted with the other one. So that seems to me like a pretty high re-injury risk. Even if he plays, I have trouble believing he can take the full workload. I'm thinking like 20, 30 snaps. So maybe I'm too pessimistic on Cook. Like, I was kind of pessimistic about Kyler Murray going into that Bears game. Although in that case, even if he had a high ankle sprain, that was the 5th week, and a high ankle sprain usually doesn't take longer than 4. With Cook, this is a very quick turnaround by any standard.
And what the position that Kyler Murray plays, it doesn't. Not every single play is going to result in him running and getting hit the way that every time that Dalvin Cook's on the field. That's basically what he's signed up for.
Yeah, and he doesn't. I assume it's not great for an ankle to get a high ankle sprain, but he's not at risk for, like, just with that one injury alone, he's not at chronic risk of ankle problems like Cook is with shoulders.
Yeah, so that's definitely an issue. I think in leagues where I have Madison, I'm still rolling him out there. I still expect him to see the bulk of the carries. I just think if Cook's active, we see that limited workload that you alluded to. I don't see him pushing for much more than 10, 12 carries. And it's a tough matchup also on top of it.
Yeah, they might be pushing Cook to be active just because I know people like Ngwangu, or however you say the Iowa State back, but even with Cook out last week, they only gave Nick, I don't know how to say it, Nwangwu.
Wongwu.
Wongwu that only had 7 snaps out of 68 plays. So they might just be worried that they're kind of overworking Madison if somebody can't take 15 additional snaps.
Why Zimmer didn't heed my sleeper call on that one, I'll never know. Get the guy with the 4.3 speed in there. Come on.
Just run a screen or something. Who cares?
Who cares? But on top of that, Minnesota has more injury issues. It looks like Adam Thielen is banged up as well. So obviously that makes Justin Jefferson, if he wasn't already one of your top 5 receivers for a given week, even firmer reason for that. But what are kind of the secondary options as far as those Vikings pass catchers are concerned? Does things funnel more towards the tight ends like Tyler Conklin, or do we see guys like KJ Osborne come around a little bit?
Well, last week Osborne just played the 3-down role opposite Justin Jefferson, so that means he was in during 2 wide sets. In 3 wide sets, Dede Westbrook was the third one onto the field, and I guess I don't know for sure where he was lining up because when they had Thielen healthy and Justin Jefferson at the same time healthy, KJ Osborne would be the slot guy in 3 wides. It looks like we might see them move Osborne outside in 3 wide sets here and have Westbrook play the slot, which I don't actually like. Westbrook's, I feel like he'd be better at outside receiver and downfield. Like he kind of sucked playing in the slot for Jacksonville.
Not good in traffic.
Right. Yeah. He's like tiny. He doesn't like the contact. He drops the ball a lot when he gets hit. So we'll see. I would keep Osborne in the slot in 3 wide if I were them, but I don't know what they're going to do. But Osborne, he's played a lot more than Westbrook. He's been more effective than Westbrook, and Westbrook is maybe still not even 100% from that late season ACL tear that he had last year. So I think you can expect Osborne to play at least 50 snaps.
So you going to be in your showdown lineups?
I'll have to think about it. I mean, it's not a bad matchup, especially with Hayden out. I don't know how much. Maybe they got Witherspoon more in last week. I'll have to look for the Steelers. But when Pierre, whatever his name is, was out there, he was getting beat like a drum. And maybe Osborne's maybe he's a little overexposed in a 3-down role. But especially if he's running against backup corners for one game, I think he can carry that load.
Okay, I could definitely see it.
But Conklin could be also he's just kind of like in that underneath sort of middle of the field kind of area.
Right, exactly. So Conklin, I think, with just like the sheer amount of targets that are removed with Thielen's absence, I figure that Conklin kind of profiles as like a fringe, maybe top 10 type of tight end for this week. So
yeah.
I like his chances this evening. On the Steelers side, what are we looking at? Obviously, Deontay Johnson coming off the pretty monster performance last week. Najee Harris, obviously just continues to churn as the primary running back for them. What's there to see along the fringes for this Pittsburgh offense?
Well, I guess I'd be a little worried about Roethlisberger on the short week. Maybe making the Vikings defense look a little better than it normally would be. Looks like after 1 week out, Eric Kendricks is back, so that could be quite a bit of additional pressure for Najee Harris because Kendricks definitely one of the best, and with him out of the lineup, I think that had something to do with Jamal Williams having the decent game that he did. So Kendricks being back, that's pretty concerning for the explosive upside of Harris, though the workload seems like it's non-negotiable. That'll be there. I would think that Claypool is better at threatening these Vikings corners. Like guys like Bashaud Breeland and Cameron Dantzler are both slow, especially Dantzler, but Breeland's been getting beat deep his whole career. So Claypool may be better at beating them than Deontay Johnson might be, but Ben Roethlisberger is so much more dependent at throwing the part of the field where Johnson is that I guess you consider Deontay Johnson still the lead guy there, even if Claypool runs in a part of the field that Roethlisberger just can't strike as readily as Johnson does.
Right, exactly. So Johnson tends to be the one with the higher floor on a week-to-week basis, but Claypool can be the big play threat. But you that relies a lot on Roethlisberger getting the ball there, and that tends to be a bit of an issue. Let's get on over to Sunday's action. Leading things off, Seahawks Texans. Seahawks 8-point favorites on the road. Seahawks coming off the impressive game a week ago against, what at the time was one of the hotter teams in the league in the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, a lot has been made of Russell Wilson's overall record against the 49ers. So, you take that into account, but you also have to think about how the Seahawks had played in recent weeks since Wilson's return. Was last week the sign that Russ is back, or are we pumping the brakes on that? And can the Texans even do anything about it either way?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe Wilson would have had more pressure on him in that game if Garoppolo hadn't turned it over twice, and maybe under that additional pressure, he wouldn't have looked as improved as he might otherwise at a glance. I have no idea how to guess what's going on with Wilson, because I think it does just come down to the state of his hand, his finger, whatever, because I'm probably more critical of Wilson than most people actually, but even at his worst, I don't think he has games, especially not in a row. Does he have games like Washington and the other one where
Green
couldn't
Bay?
couldn't get the ball to Metcalf, and I guess he's still working on that even now. But if Wilson is improved, Metcalf will eventually show back up. Like the idea that he's just going to disappear for no particular reason isn't possible. So it is possible that the finger is still an issue, but I don't know how to call that from here. I guess you could say against the Texans, it might not matter. And maybe we'll see it over the course of their game plan. Like if they try to air it out a bit here, then maybe he is feeling better and they are trying to kind of regain a rhythm and identity as a passing offense. But if they give whatever the coalition of Homer and Penny and DJ Dallas, Collins, whoever, if they give them like 40 carries combined, then maybe they're trying to hide the hand a little still.
Right. And I think that they would endeavor to try to get that big lead, especially if Wilson, and they don't think that he's at 100%, then just kind of put this one on ice in the second half with a lot of run plays, that type of thing. How do you sort out that Seattle backfield? Obviously, Adrian Peterson scores last
All right,
week.
Peterson. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that happened. That was a real thing that happened. I saw Rashad Penny draw a lot of fab interest this past week. Collins, obviously, on the injury report. DJ Dallas showing some explosive last week in his own right. Is this going to be something that it's basically impossible to guess, or with any sort of real statistical backing as far as who among these guys is going to be the most fantasy relevant?
That's how I feel about it. The way I look at it is, if Penny is healthy, he's clearly the most talented player here, but he's been hurt and unproductive too. I guess not so much last week, but the games before that, going back to last year when he initially came back too soon from that knee injury, Penny has not even been productive. So I know that he had his critics all along. Like a lot of people hated that pick just because they didn't expect him to go as high as he did. But if Penny is healthy, he's a pretty well proven player from scrimmage. Like he's more of a speed back than a power back, but he has a certain level of explosiveness that in his first 2 years he reliably produced. And after the injuries of last year, the knee injury, he's just kind of been a dud. So I don't think he's healthy. And if he's not healthy, he's just probably not very good. And if he's not very good, then yeah, DJ Dallas can play ahead of him. Travis Homer could play ahead of him. Alex Collins apparently will, whenever possible. So I'm not inclined to look at any of them really. The one thing is, it seems that DJ Dallas is their passing down guy. So I don't know how much that'll be necessary against the Texans, but when they pass, you can count on Dallas being out there. But when they run, you can't really count on anyone in particular.
Yeah, it's one of the just kind of black holes among running back depth charts to find out there. It's really been almost impossible to sort out, and no matter who the right answer has been, it hasn't really been right enough for it to like be a huge jolt to your respective fantasy lineup. And on the other side of that one, anything of interest on Houston's side, especially now they're switching back to Davis Mills.
I guess he's got to be better for the receivers, the pass catchers, than Tyrod, if only because he's not going to take as much of a share of the offense from scrimmage as Tyrod, and the share that he gives up is going to turn into pass attempts. So that's something for the pass catchers, I guess. But uh, I don't know how you project the productivity of a team like this and the situation that they are. There's basically seems like a slight mutiny occurring against the coach, or at least I don't know what Zach Cunningham could have done to get them so pissed off at him that they cut him.
Showing up
Was he?
late.
What's that?
Showing up late, I thought I saw.
It's got to be more. He had to let. He must have they said come in, and he was like no, something like that. It must have been him being like, you're a chump, David Culley. I don't care. I'll say it in front of everyone, and then it takes something like that to get you to cut probably like your third best player. Not that he's not like a all pro or something, but Cunningham's good. He's the probably the best defensive player at the moment by quite a bit. So for them to cut him and after recently extending him to that pretty sizable contract, they have to be just an embarrassing wreck on the inside. And I don't know what street ball is all they're really capable of playing. Maybe something happens, but it's probably not the ideal way to go about it.
Yeah, it song remains the same as far as Houston is concerned. So we don't need to unpack that too much further. We got a viewer question from our friend C Griffin. Wants to know, should he take a little bit of a risk this week at quarterback, going with Taysom Hill, not to confuse him with Tyreek Hill. Again, it took me a second there. I was like, is this a super flex? And you start him over Cousins, but basically Taysom Hill with the busted hand in his own right, or Kirk Cousins playing on the short week.
Oh man, this is a tough one, and it's probably one of those questions that I'm one of the worst people to ask because I kind of do want to go with Hill, but that might mean it's a reckless and stupid thing to do. The fact that I think it's a good idea might mean that,
but
I
they're
do
playing the Jets.
I know, and it's like if he just, I mean, if anything, the hand injury means they have to run that much more.
Yeah, less passes for him, the better. Like after last week, holy smokes! Like some of the most pathetic interceptions any of us have ever seen.
Yeah, man, I don't know, because it's if it doesn't work, it's one of those things where everyone will rightly say like you're an idiot. How could you possibly advise someone to do something so irresponsible? I don't know. I think I would do it, but I can't really advise anybody else to do it exactly.
I'll back you on this.
If you want to play it safer, I would go with Cousins, but I am tempted by just the rushing. Like if they go just vintage BYU against the Jets, and they might be able to, then Hill could put up, like that Texas game or whatever.
Yeah. So the risk is baked in. He knows that if he goes with Taysom Hill over Kirk Cousins, then he will obviously be kicking himself if Hill totally implodes. But I think in this particular situation, going up against the Jets, whereas Cousins working with a 50% at best Dalvin Cook and no Adam Thielen against the Steelers.
Yeah. All right, the Thielen detail. Not that I forgot that, but I'm a little more spooked by Kirk when you say it all in a row like that.
Also, famously awful in prime time is Kirk Cousins. Okay, there it is. We talked it out. The board of trustees has spoken. It's Taysom Hill over Kirk Cousins week, everybody.
Let's do it. Everyone.
Let's ride. Okay, on to the next one. We got Cowboys going to the nation's capital to face the football team. Cowboys 4-point favorites in this one. The Cowboys coming off a win over that Taysom Hill-led Saints team a week ago on Thursday. Washington coming out of that exciting game against the Raiders this past weekend. I believe this is the first time that they've clashed this season. How do you see this one shaking out?
Well, the Washington defense seems like it's getting a little better lately, but it's hard to tell how much that means because they couldn't really have gotten worse. There's a chance they would have gotten better for no particular reason. Maybe there's a reason. I just don't really see it, obviously. The problem is we also don't really know what Zeke Elliott's status is. We know he's going to play. We don't know what percentage he's at. And you're talking 75% Zeke Elliott. That's a big difference between even 85 or 95. And his numbers lately have been more like 75, you would think almost, because some tough matchups in there, but he just doesn't have the burst. He looks like Cowboys Eddie George or something like that.
Yeah, and then that it's such a stark comparison when they do bring Pollard out there. It's like, oh, that's what That's what it's
Yeah,
supposed to
like
look
one of these guys is not hurt, it seems like, and the other is. But yeah, so Pollard you feel good about, and if you're the Cowboys, I don't know what reason you have to give. If you must play Elliott while he's hurt like this, have him play 15, 20 snaps if possible. Give Pollard anybody that other work. Like you're going to get more for those reps, and you give Elliott more of a chance to heal. Apparently, they're not so interested in the second part, so we'll see. They could choose to keep hurting themselves by giving Zeke reps that Pollard. I guess the foot bears monitoring though. If Pollard's foot is messed up, I guess they don't really have much choice. But yeah, the Dak should be in a good spot here. Um, I can't really see any reason why the Dallas offense would fail. The question, I guess, is whether the Washington offense can make a game of it. And I do like the chances of Terry McLaurin running against this kind of defense. Like I think if you're going to stop a guy like McLaurin, you need someone ideally more like Casey Hayward for the underneath and intermediate, like last week, and a safety to put on him too. Like that's how you need to approach Terry McLaurin. If you're trying to gamble against Terry McLaurin, like the Cowboys corners tend to, that's just too much fire to be playing with at once. And if they do that, I do think they open themselves up to the big play because McLaurin's just fire alarm all the time, every play. Like you have to be on him, and if you let him wander around, if you start wandering around, he'll probably just get behind you. So I do think Heineke has it in him to make it a close game. I guess it would depend on if the Cowboys pass rush can get to him before McLaurin can really hit top speed.
Yeah, so that's obviously a huge. We'll see Dallas do everything in its power. Looking forward to a potential Diggs McLaurin matchup. I don't know if they do shadows or not as far as their cornerback rotation
They
goes.
should, because Anthony Brown is a real sitting duck on the other side.
Yeah, that'd be an issue. And then your thoughts on Amari Cooper? This will be his second week back. Runs 19 routes last week. Targeted just a couple of times. Caught both of them though for 41 yards. Had that one long reception against the Saints. We expect him to be more involved this week to the point where you start him with confidence.
I think you probably start him. I don't know if you don't really take it for granted that he'll be himself, but the matchup is good. There's urgency on Dallas's part. Like maybe he can't play every snap he normally would, but you get the feeling that Dallas might need him and might know it and might plan to get him some shots. He only needs probably 25 snaps, 35 snaps to be as productive as some other players who are at the very least wide receiver 3s in fantasy, maybe even wide receiver 2s. They could also do something where even if he still doesn't have his breath, his wind back because of COVID, they could just make sure he's only out there for pass plays pretty much. Not hurry up, I guess, but they could do a thing where he plays only 25, 30 snaps, but he runs, so that would be like half of his normal snap workload. Maybe he gets to 3/4 of his normal route count, even if they cut the overall workload in half, something like that. So it's kind of risky. I guess some team might be so rich that they have a clearly better option, and I wouldn't worry about benching Cooper in that case. But generally, I think he should be in most lineups that have him.
Yeah, I feel good about him. Last week he looked good just on the limited workload. I expect him to play closer to his full snap share. Push for over 40, maybe even 50 snaps in this one. And if that's the case,
that would be a slam dunk. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move on over to our next game. But before then, we got a quick message from our sponsors over at Blue Wire. And we're moving on. AFC South, Jaguars, Titans. Titans coming off the bye. Jaguars coming off another Jaguars week.
Oh, my God.
Go on.
Oh, well, Urban Meyer is just the biggest loser in the world, pretty much. And so that guy doesn't do anything, first of all. He just he just shows up to that job, gets paid a lot to just kind of give a couple. He looks around probably very seriously. He looks around so that everyone knows how closely he's watching and how seriously as a coach he's assessing everything. But there's nothing in that head of his. There's no thoughts other than like I want cheeseburger. I want whatever he just wants.
That's relatable.
whatever is well, yeah, but like the thing is,
We're not running.
you
Yeah.
space it out, you keep it under control. You don't feel so entitled that you just you go through life with just like a series of urges running through your head that lead to you giving orders to underlings of various kinds, and those underlings maybe being running backs coach Bernie Parmalee, who if you as Urban Meyer, for instance, were to bench someone like James Robinson for someone like Carlos Hyde, in the press asked you if you did that, you might just, you being John, you would say, yeah, that was me. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. You could say something like that. But if you're Urban Meyer, what you do is, knowing perfectly well that it was your choice to have that happen, you don't quite deny it. You just sort of go like, oh, I don't really, no, I don't think I did. I don't micromanage the running backs coach is the thing you got to know. And like, actually, he did. He did say, put Hyde in there, get Robinson out, and then he blamed it on the running backs coach instead of just owning his decision there. And not just that, but like he doesn't do anything else, which means this is the only thing he does do. He sits around just like with nothing in particular in his head all over the course of the week, throughout the game, and because he still feels in some part of him that like, yeah, I am actually the coolest, badass coach. I'm the man. He needs to kind of prove that to himself occasionally by actually raising his finger for something. And so when he sees a fumble by a player like James Robinson, he goes, this is a moment for me to prove what a real coach I am and show how serious I am by saying, hey, stop fumbling. I don't like fumbles. And so he does that and he feels like, hey, I'm really setting an example here. I've done my job for the day. I can go do whatever, philandering I had in mind and be done with this now. Anyway, this Trevor Lawrence and James Robinson both went to the press basically in the past few days and were just like, this is a joke. They didn't come out and say it that way, but if you read the quotes and if you account for how these players normally behave politically, how they normally speak in these situations, you can see the hints. They're laying it out there for anyone who wants to see it. Trevor Lawrence is basically like, yeah, I said, Meyer, don't bench James Robinson, please. And then he did it. And he felt the need to go to the press and leave that out there. James Robinson said, oh yeah, I did get benched, after Meyer said, no, we didn't bench him. So they don't respect him. They're kind of doing what's going on in Houston probably. Yeah. But it's just like a way dumber version somehow because of it being the Jaguars.
Yeah, it's been impressive, the fail off between the two of them.
So anyway, Titans win even though they suck.
Okay, but sticking with the Titans, there are some fantasy implications here. Obviously, with a juicy matchup coming off the bye against the Jaguars, who's the running back to start?
I think it's got to be Hilliard. Like, I was interested in Foreman if the competition was only Adrian Peterson. But Dontrell Hilliard, don't get me wrong, I lost the faith. I stopped keeping track of him after the Browns cut him, whenever that was. But before the Browns cut him, he looked pretty good with the Browns, and he was a totally good player at Tulane. So he had pretty decent pro day testing, I think, also. So Hilliard checks every box, really. I mean, he has no pedigree as a prospect, but he's always played well when he's gotten opportunities, and he's a good athlete. So him and McNichols are both clearly the best players there. And if McNichols can't play, I think Hilliard's the guy.
Okay, so with that, is Foreman kind of third on your pecking order?
Yeah, he's. I don't think he's the guy that he was at Texas. Like that Achilles tear really did make him more like a 4.65 guy. And Deontay Foreman, if he's running a 4.45, is pretty interesting. If he's running a 4.65, he's just some guy.
Right, exactly. Because he does check in with that big frame, 6'1", 236, but his broken tackle percentage, bottom 25 percentile among running backs. So you want someone that's supposed to be that big and powerful to hold up the powerful end of that bargain. Before we get on over to our next game, a message from our friends over at WynnBET. If there's one thing we appreciate here at Rotowire, it's making good decisions. And even more so, making the right decision. Listen up, folks. I have an incredible offer for you with Rotowire's newest partner, WynnBET, the premier digital casino and sportsbook app. WynnBET is now the exclusive sponsor for Rotowire's fantasy podcast. WynnBET brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. You want a break from sports betting? Head into WynnBET's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at Baccarat. WynnBET is currently available in 6 states. That's Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WynnBET, the possibilities are limitless. WynnBET is currently offering all Rotowire listeners a risk-free bet up to $500 on your first wager. Download WynnBET now. That's WYNNBET. WynnBET, the exclusive partner for Rotowire's fantasy podcast. Also got a message from our friends over at Yahoo DFS. The NFL season is heating up, and Yahoo is going big on daily fantasy football this season. There will be a ton of big prize contests throughout the year on Yahoo, including their multi-entry contests now being shark-free. To celebrate Yahoo going big on DFS, as well as Yahoo Daily Fantasy becoming shark-free, Yahoo is giving all users the opportunity to claim free $10 in site credit. Users can take advantage of the free $10 in site credit offer to join any paid contest, including Yahoo's biggest contest, the weekly $1 million DFS Baller Contest. The weekly $1 million contest features $1 million in total prizes, including first place receiving $100,000 and tons of overlay in prizes. Play daily fantasy football on Yahoo this season. Visit sports.yahoo.com/dailyfantasy/welcome to claim that free $10 and to get started. Again, that's sports.yahoo.com/dailyfantasy/welcome. All right, Mario, on to the next game as we press through the week 14 slate. We got a good one here. Raiders, Chiefs. Chiefs, 9.5-point favorites. Obviously, I think one of the more standout games from this season was that first installment Chiefs Raiders on that Sunday nighter. I think it was kind of at the peak of the malaise for the Chiefs. Everyone was wondering if they were ever going to wake up. They woke up that night. I think they've kind of gone back to sleep in a way a little bit, but they get the Raiders at home now. What say you?
So I don't think the Chiefs offense has really solved its issue. Its issue is they only really can capitalize on certain parts of the field, at least to the standards that they're accustomed to. They can only capitalize to that extent in certain parts of the field, and defenses are spamming that part of the field. Most defenses, I should say. The Raiders, the one exception, but most defenses are spamming those parts of the field that the Chiefs are basically dependent. And at the very least, those defenses are kind of bluffing. That the Chiefs aren't going to take anything underneath. And the Chiefs generally have failed to call that bluff. They, aside from that one game where Darrell Williams had 1,000 yards receiving, because the defense every single play is just like, we're not covering this guy. We're going to sit over here and not cover this guy. And for most of the struggles, Mahomes would kind of just look at Darrell Williams be uncovered and say, I still got to get Tyreek going. And he'd ignore Darrell Williams and try to force it somewhere else. You have to just take that Darrell Williams play until the defense covers it. That's the reality. And if you can't, then you need to replace the Darrell Williams analogy with like the run game with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I do think Clyde Edwards-Helaire helps. So it's not as bad as before. But basically, I think the only reason the Chiefs had that big game against the Raiders is because the Raiders run the outdated kind of defense that we know does not work at all against the Chiefs. So Gus Bradley can either become a different coach or at least, competently implement a game plan that isn't within his normal preference, or Mahomes gets back on track here because the Raiders are running a bad idea against him. So I'm inclined to say that Mahomes has another big game here. I don't trust that Gus Bradley can come up with anything else. And unless he can, I don't think that the cover 3 stuff that the Raiders run, it doesn't work. Like that will just get you vintage Mahomes if you run that.
Okay. All right. So things are looking good as far as the Chiefs offense potentially
and defense
in this rematch. Yes, the defense playing much better. How's that set up for a skill position group for the Raiders that is sorely lacking? I mean, Hunter Renfrow is kind of option 1 right now. Darren Waller's still on the injury report, and then you've got guys like Bryan Edwards, Zay Jones, Deshaun Jackson. None of those guys making huge impacts right now. So beyond Jacobs and Carr and Waller, if he's healthy, is there anyone that you can really feel decent starting now?
No, I think Renfrow, I guess a certain target count is always worth something, but I worry about every single part of the Raiders offense falling apart here. Not so much the run game. I guess if they stick with that, Jacobs can get a decent chunk on the ground. But I do think Jacobs might need to be their leading pass catcher here. And if so, like they're just kind of Chiefs cover is where I'm going with this. I think Chiefs just rock them.
I I can definitely see that happening. Yeah, the Raiders they started hot, then they had a small resurgence here, but I think that they're going to be true to form here and be kind of like a slightly below average team that gets taken advantage of by a good team. Let's get on over Saints Jets. This one being played at the Meadowlands. Saints 5.5 point favorites on the road. Is it even with the Jets detail here? That feels like a lot of points to be trusting with the Saints, but again, it is the Jets detail.
Yeah, so the Jets defense is probably the worst in the NFL, even when it's fully healthy. But they might be without Sheldon Rankins again with this one, and I guess C.J. Mosley might even be out. I guess we'll see what happens with his back issue. But Rankins is a really good run defender. It hasn't really shown up in their box score, I guess, but he's a good player, and without him, they get worse. So the be it Ingram, whoever, if the Saints need Tony Jones to run the ball in this game, I think they'll be able to. So hopefully for the listener viewer who asked about Taysom Hill and our subsequent advice to go with Hill over Cousins, hopefully Hill gets also in on that big game. But basically, the Saints could run for like I don't know, like 225 yards here.
Yeah, this will be tricky for the Saints slowing them down, or the Jets. I'm sorry, slowing them down. Your thoughts on Kamara? How much workload he could realistically project for if Ingram is to miss this game, which is kind of expected at least as of Thursday.
Well, full practice on Wednesday, so it seems safe to say that Kamara is going to get at least and very least half the snaps, or at least that's the way I see it. Assuming he doesn't have a setback or something like that. Even if they give him a rest day on Friday, I think it's pretty clear that if they do, it's because they plan to give him something like 40 plus snaps. So yeah, Kamara, he's going to be out there. I think he's going to have probably a pretty big game. Maybe he needs to get it done on the ground. Maybe there's not so much he can do as a pass catcher, but even if he has to do it all on the ground, uh, I would be surprised. I would be disappointed if he's not a running back one this week.
Yeah, I would too. And famously, we have a little bit of sample from a year ago of how Taysom Hill and Kamara coexist, and a lot of hand wringing about the lack of targets. But we've seen it kind of sea change as far as how Kamara is used in this offense this year. Gets the ball more when he's healthy. He's running the ball a lot more than he ever has in his career. So I think
No
that
Michael Thomas either
yeah.
this time. Michael Thomas was poaching his pass catching work.
See, exactly. So you can't take that sample 1-to-1, apply it to this year. That's what I'll say out there on that. On the Jets side of things, Tevin Coleman was in the concussion protocol as of Wednesday. Does that do anything for you for a Ty Johnson, or are we just kind of out on this backfield and game script might get away from him?
Well, Ty Johnson, I guess, could get those check down passes even if they're falling behind. And I don't know. It's a there could be enough usage for Ty Johnson that he's actually pretty interesting. It's especially in PPR where if he catches the ball 5 times and it only goes for 25 yards, you're not terribly burned by it in PPR. So I'm a little more interested in Ty Johnson than I expected, but yeah, it's not because I expect it to go well.
Yeah. That's basically the nicest thing you can say about any of these Jets skill guys at this stage. Let's move on over. Falcons, Panthers. Panthers 2.5 point favorites in this one. Obviously, had the famous coaching shakeup during the bye, going ahead and jettisoning Joe Brady, who was the golden boy in basically all of football as of about 2 years ago this time.
As of about 3 months ago. Yeah.
And now here we are. Very, very rapid descent for him. I don't know what you can really do if you're Joe Brady, or what you could have done. You come into this year thinking it's going to go one way. Darnold is worse than anyone could have imagined. McCaffrey gets hurt. You got to make a midseason quarterback change to Cam Newton. I mean, it was a tough hand that he got dealt, I feel like. And that it feels a little short-sighted, and it feels a little bit, overused cliche, but a little shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic as far as the Matt Rule tenure.
Yeah, I mean, even if Brady were some version of bad this year, it's kind of strange that they would go to the extent of firing him, short of some kind of disciplinary or team politics issue. Anyway, it's strange that they would cut him, and the fact that they did the fact that they did fire him, and since the conventional reasons don't really justify it, it does strike me as the kind of thing like David Tepper. He's just some stupid rich guy. He doesn't actually know anything, but he has a lot of power and he has a lot of personal experience of the idea that when he wants something, he gets it, and it's easy to get, and it's basically a matter of him demanding it, ordering it, and then he gets what he wants. So when you're used to living that way, you look at something complex like an NFL team and a season, a multi-year rebuild, and you think, fire that guy. He's not, just fire someone. I got rich by saying fire somebody. And
Yeah,
it works every time until now, David. This is don't get me wrong. Joe Brady might not be good. I guess he probably isn't. But like you said, even if he was bad, it's not the reason that the Panthers are in this position. And Rule being willing to fire him instead of just saying like, let's just ride it out. I'll fire him in the offseason. Who cares? Like, why do we got to fire him now? I just got to do more work in the week now with him not here. The fact that he was willing to use him as the scapegoat, I think means that the owner went to Rule and said, you have to do this. And he did it.
okay.
So they suck. Their defense is pretty good, but they're a really badly run team, and their problems will not be fixed with this move.
You think the Falcons go up there and win?
I mean, it shouldn't happen. There shouldn't be a reason that the Falcons win this game, but I definitely think Arthur Smith is a better coach than Matt Rule, and maybe the Falcons have less. The Falcons do have less to work with. Like the Panthers should have a good defense. Like that, despite all their issues, their defense should play well and continue to hold up even against decent offenses, which the Falcons are not. But Arthur Smith, I think, can get 110% out of a team, and I think Rule can't get more than 85, or at least given the circumstances, I don't think he can. So I really don't want to bet on either team here, but I guess if I had to, I would take the Falcons just because, I don't know, I'm worried about the Panthers even showing up. I'm worried about them having the basic preparation details, dotted and crossed, whatever.
Yeah, it's been a mess basically since September for the Panthers.
The whole year, really. Even when they were winning, their offense sucked. Like I remember looking, I was like, this isn't gonna keep working. So once Darnold's not running for 14 touchdowns or whatever he's on pace for, there's just gonna be no points left.
Oh yeah, that Texans game. Interesting times. Long ago. Doesn't even feel like it was from this season. Let's go on over Ravens, Browns. Browns 2.5-point favorites. These teams met 2 weeks ago. So the interesting little scheduling quirk. Browns played in Baltimore, had a bye. Then they get to host Baltimore. Baltimore plays Cleveland at home, goes on the road to Pittsburgh, now goes on the road to Cleveland. Browns 2.5-point favorites. Ravens, their pets' heads are falling off at this point. Marlon Humphrey goes down for the season. They were already giving up so much on the defensive end, and he wasn't having a very good year by his standards, but losing him and the drop off between a corner rotation that would have had Humphrey and Peters coming into the year, now Chris Westry and Anthony Averett, who we saw get picked on routinely last week, has been picked on routinely all season. Can the Browns do anything, though, to really exploit that?
Maybe they can screw it up, but I think so that the scenario the last time these two teams played, granted, yeah, it took 4 interceptions from Lamar Jackson for Cleveland to get the win, but despite the 4 interceptions, yeah, like the Browns were only in it because of those 4 interceptions.
Yeah.
And that was definitely true at the time. But this time, without Humphrey, like Humphrey was saying after that game, we were willing to sell out against the run because we were willing to take our chances with Mayfield. And part of why you take your chances with Mayfield in those situations is because you have a guy like Humphrey shutting down wherever he's looking with the ball off that play action play, if it's going to receiver anyway, he is. This time, if they sell out against the run, they might not be able to do it. Like they'll maybe they do stop Chubb, but if they do, it's much more likely this time that Mayfield completes the passing question. So that combined with I really think it's the terminal phase with the Greg Roman offense. If I'll just say it right now, if John Harbaugh isn't fired, or if John Harbaugh doesn't fire Greg Roman after this year, I'm not drafting any Ravens next year. Maybe Dobbins, but I'm not drafting any Ravens next year because the Roman offense is imbecilic, and it's to whatever extent it might have worked, it has been figured out by defenses. And if you watch every defense that's playing them this year, except I guess the Colts, maybe you just play off coverage with a basic cover three, and you just put your corners at the same spot every play. Those receivers very rarely alternate their route depth, or the stem of the route very rarely changes. Certain guys are in certain places at the same time all the time, and you can set a watch to it. So these defenses are ready. They sit where the routes break. Lamar has nothing every play. This goes on for 2 or 3 quarters until Lamar tries to run. If he fails as a runner, the Ravens fail as a team, and he eventually starts throwing interceptions. If Lamar succeeds as a runner, then the defense starts screwing up its zone assignment handoffs, and maybe that's when the passing game gets going. But short of that, it's basically sabotage how incompetent Greg Roman is. And I thought I was a little optimistic actually going into the last game with the Browns, because the Browns defense, it has a pretty weak scheme itself. And I thought they may be dumb enough to run basic press man coverage against the Ravens. And I think if you run basic man coverage against the Ravens, even Greg Roman will light you up. Not that it's him doing it, but Roman can't screw it up when you run press man coverage against Lamar. Lamar doesn't see it anymore. This is not the Ravens offense that anyone associates with Lamar's career production tendencies. They suck. They can't play. I don't see how the Browns screw this up.
I feel like I just learned a lot about my own team.
Roman's a buffoon, man, and it's kind of irritating.
I just know offense bad. That's kind of like the end of my brain.
If Jim Harbaugh wasn't around Stanford and Greg Roman around there, then maybe John would have had the realization by now that this man is a fool. But instead, he's letting Roman take down the whole ship. It's kind of disgusting.
It's bad. I think there's personnel issues on the offensive line and in the backfield. It's kind of
that's what makes it go completely wrong as opposed to slightly dysfunctional.
Exactly. So like last year, slightly dysfunctional. This year, pretty much abject disaster. It's been really bad.
With a huge upgrade at receiver. Nice work, Greg.
Oh, it's bad. It's so bad. So yeah, I like Cleveland in this one as well. Got a handful more games to get to. Giants, Chargers. Mario, it's Jake Fromm season.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to go. I have no idea. I mean, people who I trust in quarterback evaluations say Fromm just cannot play in the NFL, but he was really productive, at least. Like all the production-based quarterback models would say Fromm's probably a good prospect or something. We saw from Aaron Murray at the same school that's not always meaningful. Great production doesn't always matter. So I think Fromm's probably going to be pretty bad. Herbert, I don't know if Adoree Jackson's out. Hopefully from Herbert's viewpoint, he is, because the Giants' pass defense might not even be good with no Adoree. They're also down those 2 safeties. So,
but on the Chargers end, I mean, you have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the COVID list.
Yeah.
And they've been so heavily reliant on those 2 guys to carry that passing offense. I mean, I think Jalen Guyton obviously had the big play last week.
Yeah, jump ball.
It's going to be worse if you have to force 10 to 15 targets to a guy like that. So I mean, do the tight ends get more involved?
Josh Parham probably, and I was pretty critical of the Josh Palmer pick. I still hate it, but he does project better, I think, as an understudy to Keenan Allen than he does as a full-time outside receiver, because the fact that he's not fast doesn't really matter. And he might be able to be a decent backup for Keenan Allen if Keenan Allen is out. So, maybe it's asking too much for a particularly productive game in the volume sense from Herbert. But especially if Keenan gets cleared. But even if not, I feel like they should have enough to between Eckler and Herbert. Maybe Herbert has to run. If he has to, I think he can do it, by the way. I kind of think they should look into that.
Definitely mobile guy. Runs somewhere in the 4.6s, big dude, load to bring down. Using him a little bit more in that way. I'll tap into our old producer, friend at XM, Sandro, he always comes up with the goofiest DFS plays on a given week. Trey McKitty. Make it happen, baby.
I won't offer a comment on that.
Okay, fine.
It's
You're no
it's going to go great, John. It's a good pick.
I'm certain that he'll play 3 snaps. On the Giants side, I mean, other than Saquon, can you start anybody?
Maybe Galladay. Maybe. I don't know. It doesn't feel good though. And if Fromm is smart, he will just chuck it at Galladay. Like throw those ducks at the tall guy if you must throw them.
Yeah, I mean, just tell him that it's Lawrence Cager or
there you go.
Or Javon Mims.
Javon Wims.
Wims. Yeah. My own guy I screwed up.
Your own child. Forgetting his name. Too much chili.
Classic. Yeah, I got the chili brain going. All right, before we get on to our next game, our last message from our friends over at Thrive. Thrive is back for another season of fantasy football, and they're running huge guaranteed contests each week this NFL season. With Thrive Fantasy, you can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus on only the top-tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. Sign up today and get a free 6-month Rotowire subscription. Here's how you claim your free Rotowire subscription. First, visit rotowire.com/thrive. Second, deposit a minimum of $10 and receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. And 3, play in your first paid contest and receive a free 6-month Rotowire subscription. So again, go on over to rotowire.com/thrive. All right, Mario, let's run through these last handful of games here. Broncos, Lions coming off they get off the schneid last week. They get their first win of the season. Of course, it comes against the Vikings. Broncos did not look particularly impressive in their game against the Chiefs. 9.5 points feels like a lot. I feel like a lot. That's kind of like the general analysis there, but List seems to think that the Broncos might be the side here on that 9.5 point spread. You know, with the Lions coming off of that win, a lot of people might be on them to keep this one relatively close. What say you?
I would say the Broncos win by a lot because I guess we can give Goff some credit for playing well, but we don't need to give him the benefit of the doubt going forward over that one game. I mean, so you're not Tim Boyle. That's great, I guess, for you, but we would, I think, still expect Goff to do pretty badly against almost any defense. If he had to play the Vikings a second time, I would be like, yeah, let's count on a bad game this time. So going to Denver, going against the Broncos pass defense, who they've been maybe inconsistent this year, but generally they've been pretty good, and I don't think Goff projects well there.
Nope, I don't either. Thoughts on the Lions backfield?
I don't know. I don't trust anybody. I guess Jamal Williams has a certain amount of theoretical security, but I'm so pessimistic about his ability from scrimmage that when you compound the fact that they might not actually have that many carries to go around, I do worry about Jamal being a bit of a dud there.
Okay, all right. So like a flex consideration, like poor man's RB2 maybe for this week.
It's like if you got to play him, it's not worth stressing over, but I don't think you look for a reason to get him in the lineup.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, I like the way you put that. Got a quick viewer question here from Smokey the Cat. Who do we play? Ricky Seals-Jones, Gerald Everett, Foster Moreau, the Isle of Foster Moreau, or Cole Kmet?
Let me see.
I picked up Ricky Seals-Jones in a couple spots this week, so I might be biased. And then of course
Logan Thomas is busted again already.
Yeah, he they thought he tore his ACL. He didn't tear his ACL, but I believe he is out. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, who are the Bears again? Oh, the Packers. Yeah, I guess I would go with Ricky Seals-Jones just because when he was playing earlier, he was getting good target volume, and you would think Dallas less likely than most teams to be flat on offense. So hopefully they drag Washington into an urgent script early on, and it's not like you can count on DeAndre Carter and Curtis Samuel taking a ton of targets at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So it should be channeled pretty narrowly there. All right, let's go. a lot of good games here to finish out, aside from Bears Packers, because we know I mean, that's the biggest spread on the table. So we might have to leave that one behind. But let's quickly hit Niners Bengals. Bengals at home giving 1.5, or I'm sorry, getting 1.5 at home.
I can't tell what to think of, like the Shanahan versus Lou Anarumo here. I wish I had watched more closely some of the Bengals tape, because I wonder if they don't really have that much in terms of scheme. Like, maybe they just kind of play one on one and beat you one on one, and maybe that's how their good games go well. If you just play one on one and win one on one, you have a way of coming up short against Shanahan because he uses trickery. So I expect Shanahan to have a good game plan, and even if it's a bad matchup for Garoppolo, and even if Garoppolo's not good, especially if they could get Debo back, I like their chances of a bounce back. And I don't know. I guess I like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase against these 49ers corners, but it's hard to have a lot of faith in the median range outcomes with the Bengals. It's like they seem to blow it a lot more than they should, given how dominant they are at other times. So I think the 49ers are better at that mid-range outcome, being able to. I have more faith in them running the ball here, right or wrong. It's not to slight Mixon. It's just I kind of feel like Shanahan's a better coach than these guys, and might kind of just get one over on them.
Yeah, I think so too. I guess one thought being, the Bengals, can they afford to drop a second game in a row at home?
Not really.
Yeah, I mean, it would put them in a tough spot, but the Niners need this game as well. So this will be a good one. I'm looking forward to that one in the afternoon window. Bills Bucks. The Bills, kind of a soul cleaving loss in front of everybody. Got pantsed in the cold, in the wind.
Terrible place to have that happen to you.
Really tough scene for them. So going down to Tampa Bay now. Tampa Bay offense really rolling as we expected. They're playing at home too, where they've been even better. Bills haven't looked right in a little while now, really, if you think about it. And I'm sure that you've talked about it on the XM show. Yeah, it's been a little bit funky. So what happens here?
Maybe Josh Allen can make this a close game. I know Carlton Davis is back, but if it's kind of almost like the way the Chiefs lit up the Buccaneers in that one half. I think you actually get burned faster by Stephon Diggs if you have the audaciousness to try to press man cover him. And when you have a guy like Carlton Davis, you convince yourself like, hey, let's just put him press on their number one receiver. Like, don't press Stephon Diggs. You can't cover him in man coverage. Carlton Davis doesn't, even if he's a really good corner, he still can't cover him. So if they go press man, that's the way that Allen beats them. And same as last year. It's like, if you play zone, off zone, almost a little bit like the Ravens. If you play off zone and just like don't give Diggs that close proximity to juke you and leave you far behind. Like, if you just sit further downfield and don't let him put those moves on you, then he can still hurt you, but not as much as the first way. So maybe they can make it close, but if not, I don't think there's any cure for what ails the Bills. Like, I think they just need to restructure their offense, get the ability to threaten from the ground and the underneath from their base looks, and right now they can't. So the Buccaneers need to play it a certain way to do well on offense themselves. But if that offensive line can hold up against the pass rush, and I think it will, then Mike Evans especially should be a problem here for the Bills.
Yeah, I think, it's one thing to say that the Bills defense didn't play well on Monday night, but I think now we get to see the true test of what no Tre'Davious White does to that secondary. Obviously having to defend only 3 passes.
Love Evans this week.
Yeah,
maybe like wide receiver 1. Not quite, but I'm really high on him this week.
Really high on him. And then your quick 30-second thought on Rams Cards round 2 before we wrap things up.
Rams got some real issues, and it might even be beyond Stafford's injuries, which are a pretty substantial concern themselves. So he struggled in the first game against them. I don't know why it would get better going to Arizona this time. The Arizona defense is ruthless. I don't think the Cardinals offense needs to do that much to get a similar outcome to the first game.
Yeah, the Rams beating the Jags, it could just be space between losses more than an
The first half was ugly. It was not going well for them, that most of that game.
So yeah, I'm on the cards here as well. Another week of healthy Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins at home should go well for them. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Rotowire Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at WinBet. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.
Try Rotowire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com